The Jets lose in overtime to the Miami Dolphins and are officially eliminated from the AFC playoff race. And you know something? In this loss, this Jets team showed its versatility. I'll explain today on Locked On Jets.
You are Locked On Jets, your daily New York Jets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome. This is the Locked On Jets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Monday, December 9th, 2024, and I'm your host, John B. from GangGreenNation.com. Thanking you so much for making the show your first listener, first watch every day. Big shout out to you everydayers. This is a daily podcast covering the New York Jets with new episodes each day through the week, Monday through Friday. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Well, we have a New York Jets loss to recap once again today. The Jets fell yesterday to the Miami Dolphins 32-26 in overtime. We're going to talk about some of the rookie performers for the Jets in this game. We'll talk about how this game in many ways is a microcosm of what's wrong with this franchise. But we're going to start by talking about the way this game displayed the Jets' versatility as a football team. And I'm not being sarcastic when I say that. One of the things that I always believe is a false choice in the NFL is the discussion, should our team focus on being a good offense or a good defense? Because if you look across the league, for the most part, there are always a few exceptions, but almost all the great teams in this league are good across the board. You know, there might be one weakness or two, but you don't get to the top of the league by being only good in one area. And I think that the idea that we should build up the offense or we should build up the defense is a false choice. And part of it is kind of common sense because every unit has a game where it just doesn't perform very well. If you have a great offense, you may run into an opponent that shuts you down. You may need to lean on your defense to hold the other team to 14, 10 points to win a game. And the reverse is also true. You may have a great defense, but there are going to be games where you just get absolutely shredded and you need your offense to deliver for you. And I am also a big believer in special teams. If you're a fan of the podcast, you know how much I believe special teams play is underrated. You know, some of my favorite Jets players are special teamers who kind of fly under the radar. And I also think it's important to, even within your units, to do a lot of things well. I want to have a good offensive line, but I also want to have a good skill group. I want to be able to throw the ball, but I also want to be able to run the ball. I want to be able to stop the run, but I also want to be able to stop the pass. I want to be able to get after the quarterback. I also want to be able to cover. The more things you're good at, the better your football team is. And of course, there are some things that take priority over others. In today's NFL, it's more important to be able to throw the ball and stop the pass than it is to be able to run the ball and stop the run. Obviously, at some point, you have to prioritize things. It's more important to have a good defensive line than it is to have a good linebacker group. But in an ideal world, you want to be good across the board. You want to be good at everything. If you look at the top teams in the NFL, more often than not, they have a lot of strengths. They're not just saying we're fine with just being great on offense. That's such a false choice. And I think that there's a lot of bad analysis out there that paints the picture of winning teams in the NFL only being focused on offense. And that's just the rise of the offense, the rise of Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan. You want to be great on offense, but you also want to be great on the other phases of the game. And look at this Jets team. And this Jets team's almost the opposite. This Jets team's versatile in its ability to lose games because this Jets team just finds different ways to lose games every week. And this contest against the Miami Dolphins was the latest example of that. You look at this Jets team. This Jets team's lost a lot of games because of its offense this year, particularly the quarterback play of Aaron Rodgers. They also have struggled to run the ball at times. They've struggled in every situation. The defense has also fallen short in moments. Special teams, particularly the kicker Greg Zuerlein, has failed to come through in key spots. And then you look at within games. This Jets team has not responded when challenged early in games. You know, the game against Arizona. There are a couple other games during the season where, they essentially fell into an early hole and never dug out of it. Games where they were just absolutely blown out. There are also moments where they've failed in clutch spots. There are lots of games. Denver, for example, is one of them. Buffalo is another one. We could go down the list. The game in Foxborough in New England where the Jets have failed to come through in key moments. And then there's the game like last week in Seattle where the Jets had a chance to take total control of the game early on and Aaron Rodgers throws that pick six. Well, the Jets kind of invented new ways to lose this game, but they also went back to some old favorites. On last night's game recap, I mentioned that the Jets, I think, are the dumbest team in the NFL. And maybe this is harsh, I know, but I think it's justified to say this. Jets are the dumbest team in the NFL playing situational football, because there's really no way Miami should have had a chance to win this game. The Jets essentially had this game almost won in the final 2 minutes of the fourth quarter, because Aaron Rodgers hit Allen Lazard for a big gain. He got the Jets to the 27-yard line of Miami with 1:14 left. The Dolphins only had 2 timeouts. So if the Jets managed that effectively, the game's pretty much over. The Jets would be able to kick a field goal with, 20 seconds or so left. The Dolphins would have been out of timeouts. The game really should have been over by that point, but we saw the Jets make some really bad play calls. As an outside run to Isaiah Davis. It was kind of a gadget play because he and Braylon Allen were on the field at the same time. It was a slow developing play to the outside, east and west, in a situation where the other team's selling out against the run. You just can't have that in that situation. That play's not going to work in that spot unless the defense really messes up. Then Aaron Rodgers takes a terrible sack that knocks him out of field goal range. Then Rodgers hits an impressive back shoulder throw to Devontae Adams, but Adams gets shoved out of bounds. And last night's show, it was right after the game. Maybe I was a little too hard on Adams. The real issue was the first 2 plays that put you in a position where they got knocked out of field goal range, so you had to try that play. And it was going to be tough for Adams to stay in bounds. So maybe I was a little too hard on him in my recap. And Adams had a very good game, as did the Jets offense for the most part, except for that situational football where they fail. And they did get the field goal. They did take the lead. Give Carlson credit. He hit a 42-yard field goal, but they left, a little less than a minute on the clock for Miami, which was too much time. And then special teams fails the Jets again. An old reliable special teams failing, but in a new way. It wasn't the kicker missing a field goal. This time the kicker made the field goal. It was the Jets, not covering a kickoff well, allowing a 45-yard kickoff return to get the Dolphins close to midfield when they're out of timeouts, when they're still kind of short on time. And then another thing that you saw, and this was something that plagued the Jets all game, the Jets could not get to Tua Tagovailoa. Tua Tagovailoa threw the ball 47 times in this game. The Jets as a team, collectively, if you combine all the Jets, all the times the Jets hit the quarterback in that game, the Jets team had as many hits as you or I did. 0. They did not hit him once. And that was an issue through the game. It was one of the reasons the Dolphins were able to move the ball through the game, even though the Jets defense did have some stands in the second half, even though they did hold the Dolphins out of the end zone a couple times and force them to settle for field goals. I felt the Jets played a pretty effective bend but don't break through much of the game, but not in the key moments when the Jets needed to stop. And that's really, and when you're trying to close out the game late in the fourth quarter, in the last minute of the fourth quarter, that's when I look at your pass rush. And the Jets pass rush did not deliver. The Dolphins were able to get 20 yards into field goal range. They hit a field goal to send it to overtime. Then they marched right down the field in the overtime period, went 70 yards like that. Tua was 6 for 7 for 67 yards. Defense did not deliver. And it's kind of a microcosm of the season, because every single thing the Jets did is kind of fitting in some ways that the Jets season, for all intents and purposes, ended long ago. But the game that officially eliminated from the playoff race, the lack of a pass rush, came back to haunt them. Because every single move the Jets made this offseason and on the defensive line was a catastrophic move, a catastrophic failure. The guys they let go, the guys they brought in did not replace them well. The Jets went from having an excellent defensive line to a bad defensive line. And when they needed them in this game, they did not deliver. I think you can also look at the coaching staff. Once again, the coaching staff not having answers. You know what happened in the overtime? Dolphins ran the exact same tight end screen twice in a row. First time it went for 20 yards. Did they fix it? No. Exact same play. They run it the next play. They run the exact same play. Tight end screen to Jonnu Smith, goes for 14 yards. And the defense in general, once again, not delivering. Once again, 2 scoring drives late in the game. How many times have we said it? This is the 4th time this year. Defense has allowed 2 late scoring drives in the fourth quarter or overtime to lose a game. It happened again. So the Jets, some teams, when one unit doesn't play well, they have an answer. The other unit plays well. The Jets, it's the opposite. When they're about to win a game, when the offense actually delivers, and Aaron Rodgers plays well, the defense has an answer to make sure the Jets don't win. And the special teams has an answer. And the Jets play bad situational football. The coaching staff can't figure things out. And that's versatility. Unfortunately, it's not the type of versatility you want. Now, here on the Locked On Jets podcast, we'll reflect on this disappointing season. The Jets were officially eliminated from the playoffs. I talked about one way this loss was kind of symbolic. That was the play of the defense late in the game, not being able to get to the quarterback. There was another way I think this was symbolic, though, and it involves the play of the highest profile player on the team, Aaron Rodgers, and how it was his best game of the season. Yet the loss, in some ways, is symbolic. I'll explain why as we continue here on this Monday edition of Locked On Jets. Today's episode of Locked On Jets is brought to you by Hillsdale College. Time is our most precious commodity, so don't waste it scrolling through the same mind-numbing content for hours and hours. How can you spend it wisely to improve yourself? Well, our sponsor, Hillsdale College, is offering more than 40 free, that's right, free online courses, including Constitution 101, the meaning and history of the Constitution, Introduction to Free Market Economics, The Great American Story, A Land of Hope, and The Rise and Fall of the Roman Empire. Unfortunately, yet we don't have game management for NFL teams at Hillsdale College, but if they do, look, I'll sign the Jets up myself for that one because the Jets certainly need that class. But you should know that all of Hillsdale's courses are self-paced, so you can start whenever and tune in wherever. Plus, you can go deeper with readings, quizzes, discussions, or just enjoy the lectures. Go right now to hillsdale.edu/lockedon to enroll. There's no cost, and it's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/lockedon to register, hillsdale.edu/lockedon. Today's episode of Locked On Jets is also brought to you by Prize Picks. If you love watching the game, you're going to love Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy. Whether it's football, basketball, or any of your favorite sports, Prize Picks makes your holidays bigger and brighter. Here's why you need to check it out. You can now win up to 200 times your money on Prize Picks. Plus, this holiday season, they're giving away $30+ million in rewards during Pickmas and offering 2 free picks in December. And when your picks hit, Prize Picks makes it easy to cash out. You can get your money in as fast as 15 minutes. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after your first $5 lineup. Again, download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL. It's one word with no space, LOCKEDONNFL, to get $50 instantly after your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 instantly when you play just $5. Prize Picks, run your game. Thank you so much for making Locked On Jets your first listener, first watch every day. Big shout out to you every dayers. This is a daily podcast covering the New York Jets with new episodes each day through the week, Monday through Friday. The New York Jets were defeated yesterday by the Miami Dolphins, 32-26 in overtime. The Jets fall to 3-10, and the Jets were officially eliminated from the playoff race in the AFC. Not a big shock. It was really more a matter of when than if. For all intents and purposes, the Jets season ended long ago. But yesterday was kind of a milestone because the Jets were officially eliminated from the playoff race. There will be no miracle run to make the playoffs. The Jets' playoff drought extends to 14 straight years. Very frustrating season for the Jets and their fans. Very frustrating 14-year stretch for the Jets and their fans. Not a lot of good has come from it. One thing that was good yesterday, I thought, aside from the sack he took late in the fourth quarter, the play of Aaron Rodgers. I thought this was actually Aaron Rodgers' best game as a New York Jet. He broke a streak that was just about 3 years long. He had his first 300-yard passing game in just about 3 calendar years. 27 for 39, 339 yards, 8.7 average, touchdown, a 73.7 QBR, a 104.5 passer rating. I thought a really excellent game by Aaron Rodgers. Again, his best in the Jets uniform. Now, there's not a lot of competition. I mean, you think about the other times Rodgers played really well with the Jets. Week 3 against New England, but that was against them. I mean, Miami's defense was bad, but the New England defense week 3 was just hopeless. So that was a team that was just completely inept. So Miami's defense, as bad as they were, I think were more equipped to put up a fight than New England was. You could talk Halloween night against Houston, but actually, I didn't think Rodgers played that well that night. His statistics were really good. A dismal first half. In the second half, the numbers were good, but I thought that was more Garrett Wilson and Devontae Adams who just played out of their minds. Now, Wilson and Adams also played really well in this game, but it wasn't enough for the Jets. Wilson, 7 for 114. Adams, 9 for 109 and a touchdown. The Jets' passing game had it working in this game, but it still wasn't good enough. And I think in many ways, that's symbolic of this Jets season. It's not symbolic from the standpoint that the offense is produced at a high level, because it really hasn't. It's really been a very poorly functioning offense. This is one of the few games where the Jets actually had things working. I think a lot of the credit does have to go to the offensive line, because this really felt like the first time all year where Rodgers was comfortable with his protection. And although I think the offensive line's been solid through much of the season, which is not something I'm used to saying on this podcast, but I do think the offensive line's been solid through much of the season, Rodgers has always been kind of jittery, and he's always tried to get rid of the ball. He's always tried to avoid hits. And for the most part of this game, he was actually he trusted the protection, and they held up. And he was able to actually willing to stand in the pocket. He was willing to deliver the ball down the field. Completely the opposite of what we've seen. And he actually, moved pretty decently in this game, which is not something we've said a whole lot about Aaron Rodgers this season. But it wasn't enough. And I can't help but think about this New York Jets team over the last couple of years. And I think about the Jets team before this last couple of years. I think about Sam Darnold, who, was part of 5 touchdowns for a Minnesota team that's one of the top teams in the league this year. And how's this all connected? I think about the way the Jets build their organization. And the Jets don't build a stable organization. In the NFL, you need a lot of pieces to win. You've got a big coaching staff. You got 53 players on your roster. You've got 11 guys on the field at any given point on both offense and defense. It's not about one player here or there. It's really about building a stable organization, building the proper culture, building the right atmosphere for your football team. It's something the New York Jets failed to do. And when the Jets approach their problems, it's not really about building something sturdy. It's not like building a foundation. It's always a game of whack-a-mole with the Jets. The Jets always think that they're like one answer away from solving all their problems. It goes back to the ownership, of course. But, you think about when Sam Darnold was here. How many times did the Jets say, everything's going to be fine? We have Sam now. They have this kid who, is barely out of college. And he doesn't really know how to read a defense. And they're putting the weight of the world on his shoulders because they can't surround him with a good football team. Now think about when the Jets got Aaron Rodgers. The Jets essentially decided Aaron Rodgers was all they needed to be a Super Bowl team. Because look at what they did. They brought in a guy who could not coach because he was friends with Aaron Rodgers as their offensive coordinator, Nathaniel Hackett, a guy who brought nothing to the table. So you aren't really adding anything there. They didn't address their offensive line a year ago. They did a little bit better this year. But, think about all the moves that they've made. Rodgers obviously was not enough to bring this team to the promised land. Now, a big part of that's Rodgers is obviously on the decline. But even if we go beyond that, even if we go deeper, he played really well in this game. It wasn't enough for the Jets to win. And I think there's a lot of symbolism there. You think about all the moves that have been made this year. Again, it's a game of whack-a-mole by Woody Johnson. Okay, well, the team struggled. It must be the coaching staff. Let's change the coach. Well, how well has that really worked? Mike Williams didn't run on the red line. We got to change. We got to get Devontae Adams in here. How's that work? Devontae Adams is still a good player. I go back to what I said the day the Jets traded for him. I had issues with the trade. It wasn't that Devontae Adams was a bad player. I said it that day. Obviously, Devontae Adams was going to help the passing game. It just wasn't a move that was going to fix everything that was wrong with this football team. And at his age, at his salary, at the cost it took to bring him in, where the team was, it just wasn't a player that made a lot of sense for the Jets, because even though he's a very good player, even though he's helping this passing game, he's not really moving the needle for this football team. You just see this over and over and over with this team, the Jets, that they think that there's one magic fix there. They think that there's one move that can bring them to glory, and they don't build a stable structure. Because look at this team. Look at the holes on this team. We just talked about it in the first segment, how this team just finds different ways to lose every week. This team, there's always a problem. And it's when it's not the same problem that's costing you games, when there's a different problem and multiple different problems every week, it shows that your structure, your foundation is not there. It's not sturdy. And we can talk about the leadership of this team, or the lack of leadership on this team. Now, a lot of it goes back to the chaotic way the owners run it, where he's constantly been changing. He changed the coach 5 games into the season, and Jeff Ulbrich took over. Well, think about the leadership, because the coach is where you get most of your leadership from. Do the Jets seem like a team that's prepared for any situation? It's difficult to say like how much is the coach and how much is the players when a team loses, but there's certain things I look for out of a coach. Does it feel like the team's prepared in any given situation in a game? No, it really doesn't. And the issues the Jets had at the end of this game, kind of show you that, especially that play call again, the Isaiah Davis run where they're first and 10 from the 27 with 1:14 left. The Dolphins only have 2 timeouts, so the Jets can really run the clock down. And they call a play that doesn't make a lot of sense. Do you think the Jets are prepared? And do you think the coaching staff has answers for schematic things that go wrong? No. Do you think this team has been built in a way that's mentally tough? Again, that's something that goes back to the coaching. No. This is some of the worst coaching in the league the Jets have. And a lot of it goes back to, I think, big part of the reason the Jets have this coaching is that the owner thought that there was one magical fix, and he thought it over and over. He thought first Aaron Rodgers comes in, that's the magical fix, and then this year we'll get Sal out of here. We'll have Jeff Ulbrich take over. Well, we see Jeff Ulbrich, who might be a very good assistant coach, and it's becoming kind of questionable because you see how the defense fell apart without Saleh. You really wonder how much Ulbrich was responsible for the defense's success the last couple of years. I figure he got a lot of credit for it. But he obviously wasn't the answer. Did Devontae Adams fix everything that was wrong on the offense? No, and Devontae Adams is playing at a high level right now. I don't want to get on Devontae Adams because he's playing well. But he didn't fix everything that was wrong with the team. This team just doesn't get that it's really hard, and it starts at the top. In the NFL, the NFL is not the NBA. The NBA, you only have one player can make all the difference in the world. In the NFL, there's very, very rarely a simple solution. And the fact that Aaron Rodgers tore up the Miami Dolphins yesterday and the Jets still lost, well, that kind of proves the point. Now, here on Locked On Jets podcast, we'll turn our attention away from Aaron Rodgers, whose days with the Jets are numbered, and turn our attention to guys that we hope will be here for a longer time. We're in evaluation phase of the season. How did some of the rookies play? How did some of the young guys do? We'll discuss as we continue here on this Monday edition of Locked On Jets. Today's episode of Locked On Jets is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Jets heading to Jacksonville next weekend, the second straight game in the state of Florida. Jets are hoping to get a win, unlike the game against Miami. Jets are favored in this game on the road. I know the Jaguars are bad, but should the Jets be favored against anybody right now, much less in a road game? I don't know. Well, if you think the Jets are going to win, FanDuel.com is the place to get in on the action because, again, you get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the National Football League. This is the Locked On Jets podcast here on this Monday. The Jets were defeated yesterday by the Miami Dolphins, 32-26 in overtime. It was a scoregami. First game in NFL history that finished with a final score of 32-26. Second time the Jets have been involved in a scoregami this season. The first one came during their opener against the San Francisco 49ers. So unfortunately, the Jets on the losing end of two scoregamis this season, but still, I guess, somewhat exciting. We did watch history to some extent yesterday, although I'm kind of surprised that there's never been a 32-26 game in the NFL before. That doesn't seem that uncommon. It should be that uncommon of a score. Apparently, it was, though. Let's turn our attention now to the young guys, because even though the Jets were officially eliminated yesterday from the playoff contention, we knew this team was not going anywhere this season. We know even though the Jets were technically alive, this is really about the player evaluation phase of things. And I think the guy most eyes are on right now when we're talking about young players is Olu Fashanu, the tackle the Jets drafted out of Penn State in the first round this year, 11th overall. Got off to a bit of a slow start this season. First of all, started as a backup, then got some reps when Morgan Moses went down week 3 against New England. Got some action in the weeks that followed. Got a little action at guard after that when the Jets had some injury issues there. And then after the Tyron Smith injury a few weeks ago, took over as the starting left tackle. And it's a spot the Jets hope he will be at for the next 8 to 10 years. And they're hoping that he will be able to lock that spot down. How did Olu Fashanu play? I don't think it was as clean as the Seattle game. And look, I throw out the caveat. This is true whenever I make an evaluation immediately after a game, but it's especially true of the offensive line play because it's really tough to watch evaluate the offensive line in real time. But my impression was positive. I think there were a couple times he got pushed around. There was a penalty, but I think he held his own for the most part. And as I mentioned earlier, this was like the first time it really felt like Aaron Rodgers was comfortable with the guys who were blocking for him. Now, look, part of it's that Miami just doesn't have any good pass rushers. And we talked about that in the lead up to this game with our friend Kyle Krabs of Locked On Dolphins on our Crossover Thursday show last week. Obviously, this is not a very dynamic pass rush for Miami, but you know what? What you want is the offensive line to hold up. And, they gave up a couple sacks, but actually I think most of the issues the Jets had were on Rodgers maybe holding on to the ball too long. This version of Aaron Rodgers was actually very good for the Jets. And I think a lot of that goes back to he was feeling comfortable with the way his offensive line was playing. And Olu Fashanu, look, he did not go up against great competition, but that's what you want a first-round pick to do. You want a first-round pick to dominate competition that's not very good. So that's what you like to see. I was pleased with what I saw from Olu Fashanu in this game. I think that was a really solid performance for him. I'll be interested to see how he looks on the second view when I go through the tape. But my initial impressions were positive, and I will tell you that through other games I saw from Olu this season, my initial impression was not so positive, and the tape backed that up. So, but I think that this was another encouraging performance. I'm not expecting him to be flawless the way he was against Seattle. I just want him to look like he belongs a lot. And I think if this was another game where he looked like he belonged, I think it's a positive. Now, Breece Hall was out, so the two rookie running backs who the Jets drafted on day 3 this year, both getting in the action. I think both look pretty solid. I think Isaiah Davis is the guy who's been kind of the revelation the last couple of weeks. Braylon Allen went 11 for 43 on the ground. Isaiah Davis went 10 for 40. Allen added 4 catches for 38 yards. Davis added 3 catches for 27 yards. So kind of equal production from the two of them. It was a good bounce back game for Braylon Allen because, as I mentioned, since the calendar turned to October, he only had one game where he averaged even more than 3 yards per carry. He was about 3.9 in this game. Looking better. Had a couple nice runs where he moved things forward. And Davis looked elusive. Davis looked like a guy who could make people miss out there. Davis also scored a touchdown in this game. I think of the two, Davis actually looked a little bit better because he broke a 17-yard run. He also added a 15-yard reception. So I think the two young running backs looking pretty good. Interestingly, a couple of the rookies who were inactive. First of all, Malachi Corley, I'm not really sure what's going on with him, and also Quantez Stiggers. I was expecting Quantez Stiggers to start for Sauce Gardner, although Stiggers was on the injury report this week and was listed as questionable in the lead up to the game, although he was a full participant in practice on Friday, which usually means you're ready to go. We're not really clear on what happened there, why those two guys would be inactive. You would expect them to be active going forward, and not just active. You expect them to get quite a bit of playing time going forward because with the season over, for all intents and purposes, and with the Jets out of the playoff picture, it's a perfect time to get some young guys some reps. Perfect opportunity to get them some experience, which is the type of thing that they can build on going forward. And one last guy I'm going to mention, he's not a rookie, so this is kind of cheating by putting him in the rookie report, but you get the way Jamie Sherwood played in this game. Now, I think the tackle totals are a little bit deceiving because I noticed this in the first half. Like, he was making a lot of tackles that were way down the field when the Jets defense got off to a rough start, but he was in the middle of a lot of plays. He also, I thought, played very well in coverage. He actually got credited with 18 tackles in this game, which is kind of crazy. But look, Jamie Sherwood's shown he's a starting player in this league. He's going to be a free agent after the season. I really hope the Jets find a way to re-sign him. This game just reaffirmed how good I think Jamie Sherwood has become as a player. Come a long way from a guy the Jets drafted on day 3 in 2021 as a conversion prospect because he was a safety in college. And it took him some time. I mean, you may remember in 2021, the Jets had this disaster game in New England against the Patriots where the defense kind of got torched, which was the story of much of the 2021 season. But it was especially true in the catastrophic game in New England they played. And Sherwood played in the place of C.J. Mosley that game, had a really rough game. I think he got injured in that game, actually suffered a serious injury that ended the season in that game. He's come a really long way since then. He's looking like a quality player. Hopefully the Jets can re-sign him. And this game just reminded me of that. Anyway, that's all for today's episode. This has been the Locked On Jets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day is our motto. As always, if you enjoy the show, hit the subscribe button where you're watching or listening so that you'll never miss an episode. If you enjoy the show and are listening on a podcast source, give it a 5-star review. And if you're watching on YouTube and enjoy the show, give this episode a big thumbs up. Helps us out, helps other Jets fans find the podcast. Enjoy your Monday, everybody. We'll be back tomorrow to talk more Jets.